Did you know that in a single year, a well-managed crayfish farm can yield up to 400 pounds of crayfish per acre? That's a lot of crayfish. In fact, the industry has seen a surge in growth over the past few years. The potential profitability is astounding, with some farmers even doubling their income. It's an industry that's not just about production, but also about sustainability and a love for these fascinating creatures. With such promising numbers, it's no wonder that crayfish farming is gaining popularity. But how does one actually start a crayfish farm? Crayfish farming, like any other form of farming, requires knowledge, patience, and dedication. It's a fascinating venture that can be both rewarding and profitable, but it's not something to jump into without first understanding the basics. Firstly, let's talk about the land. Crayfish farming doesn't require vast acres of land. Even a small backyard can suffice. The key is to ensure the land has good drainage and is free from toxic materials that could harm the crayfish. Next, we have water, the lifeblood of any crayfish farm. A constant, clean water source is crucial, so consider factors such as rainfall, groundwater, or even a nearby stream. The water's pH should be neutral. Too acidic or too alkaline can spell disaster for your crustacean friends. Temperature also plays a significant role. Crayfish thrive in temperatures between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Extreme temperatures can lead to stress, poor growth, and even mortality, so it's essential to keep an eye on this. Now, let's move on to the star of the show, the crayfish itself. There are hundreds of crayfish species, but not all are suitable for farming. The red swamp crayfish and the white river crayfish are two popular choices due to their adaptability and high growth rate. But remember, each species has its own unique requirements. Expert advice can help you understand and meet these needs, ensuring a healthy and thriving population. And of course, let's not forget about food. Crayfish are omnivores, feasting on plants, insects, and even small fish. Providing a varied diet not only ensures their nutritional needs are met, but also keeps them from becoming cannibalistic, a real concern in crayfish farming. There you have it. The land, water, temperature, species, and food. These are the 5 pillars of successful crayfish farming. Master these and you're well on your way to becoming a crayfish farmer. Now that we've covered the basics, you might be wondering, how do I get started? Setting up a crayfish farm isn't as daunting as it may seem. Let's break it down into manageable steps. Firstly, you'll need to construct a pond. Your crayfish will need a place to call home, and a pond is perfect because it mimics their natural habitat. You don't need a vast lake. A modest shallow pond about 3 feet deep will suffice. The bottom should be lined with gravel or sand, and adding plants will provide hiding spots and contribute to a balanced ecosystem. Once your pond is ready, it's time to stock it with crayfish. You might be wondering, how many crayfish do I need? Well, a good rule of thumb is 1 crayfish for every 2 square feet of pond surface. So if your pond is 10 by 10 feet, you'd start with 25 crayfish. You can usually purchase them from a local fishery or online. Just make sure they're healthy and of breeding age. Now let's talk feeding. Crayfish are omnivorous and will eat a variety of foods. You can feed them a diet of fish pellets, fresh vegetables, and even small pieces of meat. However, do remember to not overfeed them. A small handful of food every other day is usually enough. If you notice food left uneaten for more than a day, it means you're feeding them too much. Crayfish also need a well-balanced pH level in their water, ideally between 7 and 8. You can easily monitor this with a pH test kit, which you can buy at any pet store. Lastly, let's touch on temperature. Crayfish thrive in water temperatures between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. You can maintain this with a water heater or cooler, depending on your local climate. Experts suggest keeping a close eye on your crayfish farm, especially in the early days. Monitor their behavior, eating habits, and overall health. This will help you catch any potential issues early and make necessary adjustments. And just like that, you've set up your crayfish farm. But what's next? Maintaining your crayfish farm is key to ensuring a bountiful harvest. Now that your crayfish farm is up and running, let's talk about how to keep it in prime condition. One of the most crucial aspects of maintenance is regular water quality checks. Crayfish are sensitive to changes in their environment, particularly shifts in water temperature, pH, and oxygen levels. Ideally, the water temperature should stay between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and the pH level should be around 7.2 to 7.8. Oxygen levels should be kept high to support the crayfish's respiration. To maintain these conditions, you'll need to use a reliable water testing kit. These are readily available online or at your local pet store. Regular testing, about once a week, can help you catch any issues early and prevent a potential catastrophe. Next, let's talk about feeding. Crayfish are omnivores, meaning they eat both plant and animal matter. A balanced diet of vegetables like peas or carrots and protein sources such as fish pellets or shrimp will keep your crayfish healthy. Be careful not to overfeed, as excess food can decay and harm the water quality. A good rule of thumb is to feed them only what they can consume in about 2 hours. Lastly, it's essential to keep an eye on your crayfish's health. Regularly observe their behavior and physical appearance. Healthy crayfish are active, have a good appetite, and their exoskeletons are hard and shiny. If you notice any changes such as lethargy, loss of appetite, or a dull exoskeleton, these could be signs of stress or disease. Experts also recommend providing plenty of hiding places in your farm. These can be rocks, pieces of wood, or specially made crayfish hideouts. These hiding places can help reduce stress and territorial disputes among your crayfish. With proper care and attention, your crayfish farm can be a booming success, but what about harvesting? Harvesting your crayfish is the most satisfying part of the process. It's the moment you've been working towards, the culmination of your hard work and dedication. So, let's get right into the art and science of gathering your crayfish bounty. The best time to harvest your crayfish will largely depend on their size and the climate of your area. As a rule of thumb, crayfish are usually ready to be harvested when they reach around 3 to 4 inches in length. In most regions, this typically occurs between late spring and early fall. Now, onto the harvesting process. You'll need to approach this task with care to ensure the safety of both you and the crayfish. Start by gradually lowering a net into the water, moving slowly to avoid startling the crayfish. Gently guide them into the net before lifting it out of the water. Remember, these creatures are known for their quick backward darting movement, so a slow and steady approach is key. Once you've harvested your crayfish, it's essential to handle them properly. Crayfish are hardy creatures, but they can still be harmed by rough handling. Always hold them gently, grasping them just behind the claws to avoid being pinched. Afterwards, you'll need to store your crayfish. If you're planning to sell them, it's best to keep them in a well-aerated water tank until they're sold. However, if you're preparing to feast on your harvest, you can store the crayfish in a refrigerator for up to 24 hours. Just make sure they're in a sealed container with a wet cloth to keep them moist. As for preparation, crayfish are versatile and can be enjoyed in a variety of ways. They can be boiled, grilled, or even added to a rich, hearty gumbo. So, don't be afraid to get creative in the kitchen. And there you have it, a guide to starting your own crayfish farm. Now it's your turn to dive in and reap the rewards. Starting your own crayfish farm can be a rewarding and profitable endeavor. It's more than just a hobby. It's a chance to connect with nature, to learn and grow, and to create a sustainable source of income right in your backyard. The benefits of crayfish farming are numerous. Not only are these little crustaceans a delicacy in many cuisines around the world, but they're also a sustainable and eco-friendly choice. They require less space and resources than traditional livestock, making them a great option for those of you who are environmentally conscious. And let's not forget the success stories that we've heard. There's the story of John from Texas, who started with a small pond in his backyard and now supplies crayfish to restaurants across the state. Or Mary from Florida, a single mother who turned her passion for crayfish farming into a successful business that supports her family. These stories are not exceptions. They're examples of what is possible when you take the plunge and start your own crayfish farm. Yes, it's a journey that requires time, effort, and commitment, but it's also a journey filled with exciting discoveries, rewarding experiences, and the satisfaction of knowing you're contributing to a more sustainable future. So what are you waiting for? Start your crayfish farming journey today. Remember, the world is your oyster, or in this case, your crayfish pond.